Hey guys, I'm Dylan, and today's video is going to be an interview with two of my friends as we talk about their involvement with music at Stanford. So I want to make a little series about the arts at Stanford, and so this one's going to be about music. And these two people are super involved. I think we have a major and a minor, but anyways, I'll let them speak. Let's welcome our guests, Chloe and Austin.
Hello, now we're recording, so thanks for joining me today. So can you both introduce yourself, like your name, your year, and what you're studying?
My name is Chloe Winterstein. I am a senior, she, her pronouns. I'm double majoring in American Studies and TAPS, which is Theater and Performance Studies, and I'm also minoring in music.
Hello, my name is Austin Zambito Valenti, he, him pronouns. I am also a senior, however, I am going to be co-terming next year, as is Chloe. So we'll be around for another year. I am doing the now dead CS plus X program. So I'm doing CS plus music. I'm the last person to ever do it.
Okay, so how would you describe Stanford's music program, just in general?
I felt like I've learned a lot in the music department. There are some really excellent teachers. I think a few of the classes have not taught me that much. So I think of the whole curriculum, there are definitely a few classes that I wished I could have avoided taking, but that's more just because they didn't really align with what I wanted to be doing. But I've really learned a lot of music theory and ear training through the program, and I'm really grateful for that because now I'm TAing a music theory class, and I really love that whole thing, and I didn't even know what music theory was before I got here. Chloe and I also take vocal lessons. I'm really grateful for that. I love my teacher, Greg. I also love Chloe's teacher, Wendy.
I'm also taking vocal lessons with Catherine.
Oh, well, there you go. It's a lot of great people teaching the program with a lot of compassion for their students. I feel really cared for in the program.
I completely agree with all of that. I don't know if it's necessarily unique about the Stanford Music Department, but looking at other schools, I do think it's a little unique how you really don't have to be a major or a minor to be very involved in the department. Heading into Stanford, I was thinking that I would almost exclusively be involved in TAPS, and then take voice lessons on the side in the music department, but not really do anything else in the music department. And I surprised myself by really kind of establishing the department as my home, and then later adding the minor, literally at the beginning of my senior year when certain requirements shifted. The music major is a little strict. There's many history requirements and theory requirements, but I know that they, just like how they changed the minor, they're going through a process of potentially changing the major too, I believe. But they changed the minor so that a lot of the history and theory requirements were removed, and it made it a lot more accessible for singers like myself, or students who are more interested in just being involved in performance ensembles to get the minor. And so that was I just kind of stumbled into that. But even if I hadn't gotten the minor, my involvement in the department has been so engaging and so wonderful, and I feel so connected to the people in the department. Like Austin said, I've been studying with my voice teacher every quarter ever since freshman fall. I also have this wonderful pianist who plays at all of my lessons, who I consider a great friend. And I've also done many vocal recitals and a lot of the department productions, which have been for me operas and musicals during my time.
So I actually don't even know how this works, but how does it section off, I guess, if you're a vocalist versus instrumentalist versus if you're into technical music production? How does that work?
Technical music production is a big part of what I do. So I take a lot of classes at CCRMA, spelled CCRMA, which is, I think, one of the really awesome things about Stanford and Stanford music. And I think there is kind of this subdivision between traditional music, such as vocal, instrumental, just that type of music, and then computer generated music and this whole new age experimental type music, which happens in a completely different building. Now, Karma is really interesting because it used to be the president's mansion, and they converted it to this beautiful, beautiful building with tons and tons of resources. So when I came to Stanford, I was mostly into vocal music, and I still am. I love that stuff, and I do that stuff constantly. But I've now also transitioned to become more of a technical music person. So I've learned how to record a lot. They have a state-of-the-art recording studio up on the hill at CCRMA. And they have, I've learned to mix and master. I've also learned to like code a lot of music. I've made my own musical instruments using both software and like physical building stuff. They have like a laser cutter and a 3D printer up there. So that's really cool. Another thing I wanted to mention is like within the other building, there is definitely like options for different types of music you want to do. Like for the major requirements, and I think the minor as well, you have to have a certain amount of like practice units.
Small ensembles.
For me,
Yeah.
a lot of that comes through vocal lessons, but that can also come through taking instrumental lessons. That can be through being in a group. I think in the chamber chorale, you can be in the
Stanford SSO, Stanford Symphony Orchestra.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we're mainly vocalists, but we have a lot of friends who are instrumentalists who do a lot in the department. Students can form their own chamber ensembles. So I know many like stringed instrumentalists who have formed like quartet ensembles, and they have a faculty advisor and they rehearse on their own and then maybe meet up with their faculty advisor, and that counts for a class. So that's really interesting. Many people who participate in those smaller chamber ensembles also perform with SSO, which is the big orchestra that performs in Bing Concert Hall pretty routinely. We have this amazing concert hall on campus.
Can we talk about Bing for a second?
Yeah.
Literally the best place in the world.
It's this beautiful, huge concert hall. They bring in all these wonderful professionals to sing or perform there. They had Renee Fleming a couple years ago. The St. Lawrence Quartet is there all the time. Oh, Alan Cumming!
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, oh my gosh, it was so fun. So our freshman year, it was winter quarter our freshman year, and Alan Cumming, who was the MC in the revival production of Cabaret, he's really iconic. He came and did a cabaret in Bing's studio, which is below the larger concert hall, which is this really, it can be transformed into any type of space that you want. And then afterwards, he held this like after party rager that was like very much sponsored by Stanford Arts in the lobby. And you could, even if you didn't go to his concert, you could go to the after party rager for free. and a bunch of us crazy musical theater kids went and partied with Alan Cumming. Yeah, that happens occasionally, but that's not necessarily directly affiliated with the music department. Like the stuff that happens in Bing is more through Stanford Arts, which is a separate organization. One critique that I think a lot of students have is that it's a little difficult for student groups to perform in Bing. Oftentimes, Bing welcomes professional guest artists for us to like watch and benefit from, and occasionally students are able to have showcases in Bing. I've had a few showcases with Wendy Hillhouse's, she's my voice teacher, with my voice studio in Bing, and that's been super fun. And we also were welcomed to perform with this Brandon James Gwynn cabaret night, which we can also talk about.
Yeah, I'll include clips. That day was so fun.
Yeah, it was so fun. The only ones I know of that consistently perform in Bing are Talisman, Stanford Chamber Chorale, which is the like classical singers choir, and SSO, which is the orchestra.
Going off of that, can you guys talk about the different student groups that are available on campus?
Okay, so we're big musical theater buffs, so I'm just prefacing it with that. Okay, so if we're thinking about musical theater, what is there? You have Ramshead Theatrical Society, which is the largest student group for theater, specifically musical theater. And those shows are GAIETIES in the fall, which we will talk about. That's how we all met. Then in the winter, they do a smaller play or new work. And then in the spring, they produce a full-scale musical. Okay, so you have Ramshead. And then in addition to Ramshead, there's Stanford Light Opera Company, which kind of fluctuates, produces musicals, sometimes operas, sometimes smaller cabarets. My junior year, Slowco produced a great miscast cabaret where you sing songs that you wouldn't necessarily be able to sing if, like you probably wouldn't be cast in those roles. And it was like very well produced. My friend at the time who was on campus, Chris Yoon, was very much involved in conducting, so he really was able to pull together a huge orchestra for that. But his greatest achievement, I think, was doing Phantom of the Opera with Stanford Light Opera Company my sophomore year, and he pulled together about a 40-piece orchestra of student instrumentalists who loved playing for shows, loved working with him, and he just did it. So I think I'll continue talking about student groups, but something that's unique about Stanford is that if you really are motivated to make a project happen, you can do it. Other than Ramshead and Slowco for music. Oh, Blackstage, they produced The Wiz, it was great. They did Ragtime. I was in Ragtime and it was the greatest experience ever. Oh, Latinx in Theater, they did In the Heights, and that was great. And then the TAPS department. This is outside of student groups, but the theater department produces a musical every other year, and they're very well produced. They bring in guest directors.
You can play in the orchestra of shows.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Every musical needs an orchestra, and we have some of the best tech people, the best orchestra. Like it's great. Like I love working with all these people.
One more thing I forgot to add is that there's a pretty vibrant jazz community on campus. So I know there's like the Afro-Latin Jazz Ensemble that performs with a faculty member, but it's pretty student driven. There's a lot of like jazz groups that perform in Coho all the time, which is the coffee house on campus. There's just a lot of different avenues for that. And there's a lot of jazz faculty too that really support jazz music. That's something else. I'm sure there's also many things that we don't even know about too, because there's just so much going on in the department. I'm sure if you do something really niche, there's probably a spot for you. And then the music department, as I've said, produces musicals. And then, so in addition to musicals, there's also a cappella groups.
Yeah, so that, I think a cappella is one of my main avenues of musical expression that I've had on campus. I think in general, a cappella isn't unique to Stanford. What is unique, at least for me, is the community that I've built through a cappella. I think it has been like my number one source of social connection. I've built like a network of my best friends through that group and through people who've come enjoy our music and come follow us along, like Chloe and a few of my other friends. And I really think that like there are so many opportunities on campus and around campus, because a lot of times alumni will reach out and have us perform at these fancy houses for these very rich people, and we'll get to like go one night, perform in front of this pool in this mansion, and then get to like dine and schmooze with all these like rich people. And it's like a really cool experience. My group also travels a lot. We were supposed to be in Australia for spring break this year, but we went to Hong Kong, New Orleans, Hawaii in my time, as well as LA. And Oregon. Everywhere we go, there's always like a network of alumni that we perform to. So I think one of my best experiences is when I was with the group in Hong Kong. We got to perform at the tallest bar in the world. And so it's like this really fancy bar in this hotel on like the high floor, whatever it is, and we were given our own personal room to like set up in before we went out to perform for people. And it was like floor to ceiling windows of like just like overlooking all of Hong Kong, which was beautiful. And then it was at this like really nice bar / restaurant, so they fed us all, whatever. The point being that like all these connections really help and really like create these awesome experiences.
Really quickly, just because we were talking about a cappella groups, could you like quickly run down like the a cappella groups if you know all of them?
I can do my best. There are 10 a cappella groups. I am in the Mendicants. I didn't say that before. I'm in the Mendicants. We're the original a cappella group, where we wear the red blazers if you see us on campus. There's another all-male a cappella group called Fleet Street. They're more of a comedy a cappella group. We do like a range of stuff. We kind of originated in doo-wop and like kind of like brown-eyed girl stuff. And we also do a lot of pop and things like that. So we kind of had a broad range. Fleet Street does more comedy, and they write a lot of their own comedic stuff. Then there is Counterpoint, the all-female a cappella group, and they, like us, kind of do a range of stuff. They air more on the pop side, but they have some like older things as well. Mixed Company is the first mixed gender a cappella group on campus, and they're very poppy. They do a lot of like that kind of fun stuff. Talisman, and their whole thing is that they tell stories through song. I think they traveled to India most recently and Africa 2 years before that, and they kind of like gather stories of people throughout the world and tell them through song. I think it's pretty different from what the rest of the a cappella groups are doing in terms of like what their message is and what the point of what they're doing is. Stanford Ragapella.
Yeah, Ragapella is Stanford University's South Asian focus on
South Asian. Okay.
harmonic.
Stanford Testimony,
Sorry.
which is a Christian a cappella group. O-Tone.
O-Tone is Stanford's co-ed East Asian interest a cappella group.
Harmonics.
Oh, Harmonics is like rock stuff. Their kind of whole vibe is like their dark clothes and like kind of like punky. I think the last one is Everyday People. Everyday People is the kind of more R&B, soul type a cappella group, and I love their music. I love all of them. I also wanted to go back really quickly to what Chloe said about really being able to create your own experiences, because one of the shows that I was in was Next to Normal, which was not affiliated with any student group. It was funded by TAPS, but it was not a theater department production. What wound up happening is the director of that show and some of the people that were in it, they'd gotten together previously and said, we want to do this show next year, so we're going to do it. And they got funding through TAPS, through I think the music department a little bit, and through some other places, and just were able to put on this production that was actually really like high tech. We had a video wall. Oh, that's the other thing. Stanford has a lot of really smart people that make really cool things for the theater. We have our famous video wall that's been used in countless productions, and we have the ability to do moving platforms, and like I know you were gonna do something for you were gonna do some tech stuff for Pippin this year.
I was doing the video wall.
Right, exactly. So there you go. And that's one of the things that I think makes Stanford theater really cool, because there's always these new minds coming up with different ideas on how to do things.
What kind of access do you guys have to like equipment and rehearsal spaces?
I have access to practice rooms in the music building. The music building is right in White Plaza, so it's really centrally located too, which is really nice and it's easy to get to. So there's practice rooms upstairs in the main building. I'd say there's about maybe 15 practice rooms in this kind of cavernous space, and they're the type with the glass door where you can kind of see everyone. I prefer going into the Dink basement practice rooms. So there's multiple practice rooms you could go to. A lot of people don't necessarily know about these practice rooms, and a lot of people don't necessarily like them because you kind of have to go into a basement. But I like it because no one's ever really there, and you don't really have to feel like anyone's going to peek in and see you doing something really weird as you're trying to grow as an artist. So there's like probably, I'd say 25 separate practice rooms down there. But I actually prefer going into the larger rehearsal rooms if they're available, and you can literally just like walk in as any student. You don't have to have practice room access. The best rooms for this are Dink Rehearsal Hall, which is in the same basement under Dinkelspiel Auditorium. That's right next to the music building, which is Braun. So there's Braun, there's Dink. You can go into the practice rooms in Dink basement, or Dink Rehearsal Hall in the basement, or the practice rooms upstairs in Braun. There's also a bunch of like classrooms that you could just kind of go into. I know a lot of the a cappella groups rehearse in the music department classrooms. There's about 3 of them that are medium-sized that are routinely used. I love just singing in there because the acoustics are pretty good. And then also Braun Rehearsal Hall, which is a huge rehearsal room. And I break in there all the time. The acoustics are great, and it's a huge rehearsal room meant for large orchestras. It's usually available. I can usually just walk in and sing for hours. And I think that's really special, and I've never really had a space like that to just go to before. I don't know how allowed that is. You're probably supposed to register it, but if no one's there, you can use the space and no one's gonna stop you.
Yeah, +1 on all that. I don't really use the practice rooms that much because you do need keycard access, and I didn't have that as a freshman, and then I started taking piano lessons and vocal lessons, and like now you just need to like apply to it, and you don't have to pay for it if you're taking lessons, but like I just never get around to it. But that's because there's so many other places to be able to do stuff that like I don't feel like it's necessary all the time. I use the rehearsal rooms a lot as well. Sometimes when I'm just like coming from class, I'll be like, oh, I want to like practice for like 10 minutes, and I'll just kind of like hop in really quickly, use a room, and then leave. There's also one room in Braun that I have a key to, and I'm not going to say which room because it's easy to get a key, and I don't want other people.
It's easy to get a key?
I'm not saying anything. And
why did you never tell me this?
Because I don't want you to use the room.
I hate you.
It's my room. Almost every dorm on campus has a piano, which is like really surprising but also really useful. Braun, that we were just talking about, was literally 5 seconds away from my dorm, like literally 5 seconds. So but sometimes I was too lazy to even go that far, and I would just go to my lobby, and there was the piano right there. And where I was living last year had its own separate music room, so I could just go in there in all hours of the night and not disturb anybody, and kind of just play the piano or sing or practice anything else. So I think there are a lot of different ways to, like, there are a lot of different spaces. In terms of equipment, there is a lot of stuff at CCRMA. Once you take a class there, you have lifelong access to it. So now that I've taken a class there, I am free to go in and use the equipment. A lot of the equipment there is you're not really supposed to take it out of the building unless you talk to somebody about it. But they have like so many different amazing microphones. They have cords and this and that. There's also event services, which will rent you some stuff. Some of the acapella groups have a lot of different equipment. Ram's Head has some of their own equipment. Yeah, and then like through the music department, you can always like, if you're doing something like a production or a recital or things like that, there are resources through the music department to help with your show, whatever that is.
Yeah, talking about like doing your own show in the music department, it's really easy if you have a faculty mentor to just book Campbell Recital Hall, which is this really well set up, beautiful space. The music department will automatically give you lights and access, and you can just do some awesome shows. My junior year, 3 of my best friends and I decided to do a musical theater quartet recital. And we were just like, okay, we're gonna do it. And it was like finding a space and having to book it was never really an issue, because we were like, we're just gonna do it in Campbell, easy. And our voice teacher booked us, and we had this really great kind of quartet recital. This isn't necessarily equipment, but resources. I wanna talk about the Friends of Music scholarships. This is something I didn't know about until maybe the beginning of my sophomore year. But for some private lessons, if you're not a major or a minor, there is an additional fee. And I think a lot of people automatically dismiss the idea of potentially taking private lessons in any capacity because of this fee, which is so legitimate. But that's because many people don't know about the Friends of Music scholarships, and I even didn't. Basically, there's this bucket of funding that the music department has, and they have all these donors, and you can apply for various different types of scholarships. So if you know that you want to take lessons for the whole year, you say, yes, I'm going to definitely be enrolling in lessons for 3 quarters, and I want this scholarship that will guarantee me to have support for the entire year. I haven't heard of anyone who hasn't gotten that scholarship. Every time I've applied for it, I've gotten it. Sometimes they aren't able to fully fund your lessons, but they are able to fund the majority of the percentage of your lessons. If you know you just want to do private lessons, or just able to do private lessons for a quarter, or you're going to go abroad in the winter, so you're going to do lessons in the autumn and spring, you can apply to just receive funding for 1 quarter. Now that wouldn't necessarily like guarantee you funding in the spring if you were going to apply again, but in the majority of cases, people receive this funding from the Friends of Music bucket, which is really great. And then at the end of the year, you can apply for departmental music awards, where you audition in video format first, and then the Friends of Music board of directors could call you in to have an in-person audition, and then that gives you the chance to potentially receive a departmental honor, a monetary departmental honor. I know those awards could go up to $1,000, and that could also go to your education, to cover lessons, etc.
Yeah, even I might want to apply for the
Yeah, literally do it.
Yes, do it.
All right, well, I think that's all the questions I have. I mean, is there any like last thing you want to say? If not, that's like totally fine.
Let's talk about GAIETIES.
Oh, right. Okay, go for it.
I mentioned this at first, but GAIETIES is a musical that Ramshead produces every fall. It's rewritten every year. It's an original student musical that is from Stanford's perspective, typically poking fun at Cal, right before the big football game between Stanford and Cal to kind of rally the troops and the students. GAIETIES is a comedy. It features original music written by students, many Stanford inside jokes, and it was a great way for me to find friends in the theater community at first. The point of GAIETIES isn't to have a really intense acting experience, but it's really just to have fun and meet other arts students at Stanford, and it's a great way to do that right off the bat with fellow freshmen. Like Austin and I became best friends through GAIETIES, and many of our other best friends who are still our best friends, we met freshman year while performing in GAIETIES with them. So it's just this really fun, unique experience. Almost everyone, every Stanford undergrad goes and sees this goofy show. The Stanford band at the end of each performance runs on stage, and it turns into a dance party in Memorial Auditorium. It's really fun, and I would highly recommend if you're interested in musical theater at all, or just want to connect with other arts people, auditioning for GAIETIES your freshman fall.
Yeah,
just
totally.
Really quickly on that, I really agree. I didn't think I was going to audition for it because I am not a comedy person at all. I mean, I like comedy, but I don't do it. So I was like, there's no way I'm going to audition. There's no way I'm going to get in. Like, I'm just not that type of person. But I did, because one of my really good friends, Gabe, convinced me to audition. And I was like, all right, I guess I will. And yeah, it was a really great experience. I learned a lot through it, but I also really made a lot of like lifelong friends. I really recommend that like everybody who's thinking about potentially doing it, do it, because like starting literally at the end of week 1, you are involved in a show, you are meeting new people, you have a lot of mentors, and you have a lot of people who are in a similar boat, and like who you get to like explore the beginning of Stanford with. You have a lot of people telling you, like giving you suggestions on what to do and things like that. So I think it's like a really awesome thing to do your first, as a freshman.
Yeah, I know from my experience.
Yeah, that's how we met Dylan.
You guys met me. Yeah, well, thank you so much for joining me today. That was extremely informative. Thank you guys so much. All right, so we can all say goodbye now. Bye.
Bye.